Thank you for being here for the relaunch reading of Haywire, a novel by Thaddeus Rutkowski, originally published by Starcherone Books and reissued by Blue Streak Press. Haywire won the Members' Choice Award from the Asian American Writers Workshop and reached #1 on the Small Press Distribution's fiction bestseller list. Of Haywire, author Minjin Lee of Pachinko and Free Food for Millionaires wrote, Arab Dennis Johnston and Richard Brodigan, Rutkowski infuses music, light, and wonder in Haywire. This is a cool and inspired story of Americans we know too little about. There is humor, curiosity, and sadness in every scene. We're here to celebrate the reissue of Haywire, and joining Thad will be Ed Lin, Timothy Liu, and publisher Max Robbins, who will give some remarks before Thad reads. And now I will read the bios of the first two readers, Ed Lin and Timothy Liu, and they will come and read in that order. Ed Lin is a native New Yorker of Taiwanese and Chinese descent. He is the first author to win 3 Asian American Literary Awards. Woo! Ed's latest book is 99 Ways to Die, published by Soho Crime in 2018. And Kaya Press will publish his first YA novel, David Tung Can't Have a Girlfriend Until He Gets into an Ivy League college, later this year. Timothy Liu is a poet whose latest book of poems is Let It Ride, also for sale in the back, and a reader of occult esoterica. He lives in Manhattan and Woodstock, New York. Now let's please give a round of applause to our first two readers, Ed and Timothy.
Oh, thank you so much, Tiffany. You're very kind. So 7 years ago, I became a father, and I started writing short stories and giving them boys' names. This story is called Martin. It was published in a anthology of holiday-themed crime stories. Called, instead of Usual Suspects, it's called Usual Santas. Good one. Okay. We were heading to Martin's because he was in bad shape. He and his fiancée, Diana, had split up for what he said was for good. What an awful time for something like that during the shit week between Christmas and New Year's. I almost ate it by stepping in a giant pool of ice water on a corner. New York City was turning into a giant melting slushy with all the flavor sucked out. But I had to push on. The guys were depending on me. I finally made it to the apartment and found that Sesh and Dougie had beaten me. Martin was sitting on the floor inside a curled-up blanket at the base of the floor lamp. Chipotle wrappers and Red Bull cans lined the nest, which cradled all the remote controls and phone accessories. I brought the headsets, I panted with pride, holding up my never-used gym bag. Considering the weather, I believed that my accomplishment was worth at least a pat on the back or equivalent form of appreciation. The guys left me hanging, though. The 4 of us had grown up together in Jersey, but the other 3 seemed to forget about me unless they needed something. In this case, they wanted my Bluetooth headsets to play Call of Duty on Martin's Christmas present, a PlayStation 4. Martin shook his head. Oh, I'm sorry, man. Someone should have gotten word to you that the PlayStation is gone. That's all right, I said. I put the bag on the floor and hid it behind my legs. I was sweaty from running over, and I looked for a place to sit and catch my breath. I'm a big guy, the biggest one in the group. Even so, there would have been plenty of room for me on the couch if Sesh and Dougie slid over, but they didn't. I dropped into the reclining chair. It made a fart sound, and Sesh laughed like a mean dog. Nice one, he said. Sesh was never trying to hurt your feelings, but he didn't care if he did. He was a Wall Street guy. I guess you could say he was the most successful among us. Dougie was definitely the smartest. He was in a PhD program at NYU for the human interface in computing. His housing was free, but he never had any money. Martin was on the management track at the Apple Store and had also been on track to be the first of us to marry. He and Diana had met in college. She was so beautiful. I could never understand why they had arguments. I would have given in to her every time, no matter what. I always gave in. I lived in an apartment that my parents owned on the Upper East Side. They now lived in China for tax-related reasons and were providing me a monthly allowance until I figured out what I really wanted to do. My father said maybe my weight would have to come down. For Christmas, they mailed me a juicer straight from the Chinese factory. I could begin my diet tonight. A large pizza with all the toppings was sitting on the coffee table. That meant 2 slices per guy. I knew I had the discipline to eat just one. I worked my way off the reclining chair and slid my first and last slice onto a doubled paper plate. It was only after my third bite, after half the slice was gone, that I thought to ask, "Martin, where's your PS4? Was it stolen?" Martin said, "Diana took it because she paid for it." Dougie spoke up. "It was your present." His voice hadn't changed since he was 15. "It should have protected status as a gift, even during a breakup." "Oh, well," said Martin. "She's coming back for the flat screen, the K-cup machine, and the lamp, and I need all those more than the PS4. Sesh surveyed the room. "Let's break all her shit." "No," said Martin. Dougie reached in for his second slice and shut the box. A small card fluttered to the ground. Sesh grabbed it. "What the hell is this?" "It says, 'What was the worst thing you ever did?'" Martin took the card. It's from a game called Sharing that our couples therapist gave us. Was supposed to help us share more of our lives together." "What was the worst thing you ever did?" Sesh asked. Martin sighed. "When I was a kid, I wanted one of those California license plates for my bike. I liked how blue they were. We kept eating this one cereal to try to pull a California plate. Then I saw that the girl across the street had one, so I stole it off her bike. I saw her crying when she found out it was gone. I felt so bad. I left her anonymous Christmas presents for years until she moved away." Dougie fixed his glasses and said, "That's actually very touching." "Sesh," Martin said, "what was the worst thing you ever did?" "Jesus. So little to choose from." "Well, actually, something I did in college. I was nominated to join this honor society because my grades were so good. One of the requirements was that I had to do a community project. I chose to raise $200 for a local food bank. I stood outside the student dining hall every day for a week like a chump, trying to get people to donate. I only collected about $50. I couldn't stand the thought of groveling for another few weeks to scrape up the money, so I went to the ATM, took out $150 from what I had saved for my campus job, and I put that into the pot." Sesh leaned over and grabbed his second slice of pizza. Wait, I don't get it," said Martin. "That was your own money that you put in?" "Yeah," said Sesh. "Well, what's so wrong about that?" "I shouldn't have raised money for that food bank in the first place. If you give someone something for free, they don't learn how to work for it." "A lot of the people who use food banks have lost their jobs or homes," said Dougie. "They have kids to feed." "Let them starve a little. Look at good old jolly old St. Nick right here," he said, pointing at me. "Sorry, don't mean to single you out, but if you went hungry for a few days, I don't think many people would say that that was a bad thing." My face went hot, and I licked my lips. "You'll see tonight, Sesh," I thought. "You'll see me skip my second slice." "Let hungry people starve," said Dougie. "That's so charitable of you this time of year, Sesh." "I won't be swayed by plastic holiday nostalgia. The truth is, when you try to comfort people in distress, you make them weaker. Let them find their own way. They'll be better off in the long run. Dougie's knees danced excitedly. Well, if that's the case, then why are we here comforting Martin? Sesh clutched his pizza slice and narrowed his eyes. Martin is our friend. He's not some jackass statistic in the street. I felt moved to speak up. Maybe I could say something to make them pity me, or at least recognize the pain I'd suffered. The worst thing I ever did was kill a bunch of tropical fish, I blurted out. In the saltwater tank at the dry cleaners. Martin tilted his head. I thought they got rid of that tank because it was too expensive. No. The power cord was paired up with the TV cable. I climbed onto the dumpster one mischief night, and I cut it with garden shears. Everything in the tank died. That's sick, said Martin. But I felt terrible about it. I knew what I'd done was so wrong. I couldn't go to the aquarium after that. I still have trouble eating fish. I had already lost everybody, though. Martin said, wasn't the dry cleaner run by those hairy people? Sesh was done with his second slice and sucked his fingers. Yeah, it was. Daughter was hot, though. She was in my gym class. I asked her if she had been adopted. She got all offended, and I was like, I'm paying you a compliment. Martin laughed for the first time that night and pulled out his second slice. He left the box open, and the last slice, which would have been my second, sat there, pointing at me, accusing me of being unable to resist it. But I would. Dougie broke his silence by saying, Guys, I think I killed someone. No, I know I did. Get the fuck out of here, said Sesh. For real. What happened? Asked Martin. You know that pedestrian bridge over Wyckoff Road? Yeah, we used to drop rocks on cars from it. Well, one night I couldn't sleep. I went out there. It must have been 2 a.m, but some cars were still going by. I picked up this rock. I swear, it was the smallest one in the world. It was just a pebble. I saw a pair of headlights. I didn't even throw it. I just kind of flicked it. I heard the windshield shatter. I saw the camper swerve and hit a tree. Sesh snapped his fingers and pointed at Dougie. I remember that accident. A piece of the bridge fell and broke the windshield. It wasn't a rock. Sesh, it was me, said Dougie. I killed that guy. I never told anybody. I've never even really thought about it. His mouth trembled. I have to call the cops and confess. Hold on a sec, dumbass. It's all over. Statute of limitations has run out. Actually, said Martin, there is no statute on murder. Dougie burst into tears upon hearing the word and grabbed his phone. I'm calling the cops on myself right now. Sesh grabbed the phone and threw it to the floor. He and Martin pulled Dougie down to the couch as he continued to wail. I saw how worried they were for him, how much they cared about him, how badly they felt for him. I stood and picked up the entire pizza box. I began to eat my second slice. I wasn't hungry. I just needed something to fill the emptiness. The other guys only called me when they needed something, and sometimes they forgot I was there. Dougie had forgotten that I was with him that night on the bridge. It was true. He had picked up the smallest rock in the world. But I had picked up a chunk of stone that had broken off the bridge. I heaved it down at the exact second he threw his pebble, aiming right for the driver's face. As I chewed through the cold, sad toppings and congealed cheese, I looked over at the three of them, a trio of best friends. I thought about what Dougie had said, and I wished so badly that I could feel as awful about killing someone and have my best friends hold me. Thank you.
Ed, I love how you do voices. That's like so great. It's really fun to be celebrating the relaunch of Haywire with that tonight. Just going to read a few poems. This is from Let It Ride, which came out in October. Love poem in a steam room. Hard to commit to memory. Their knees brushing up against my own as we recited lines no one knew by heart. Our nostrils singed, burnt scent of eucalyptus as we got on with the business at hand, not to be found in any book of verse. As far as Chofu Sa, I don't remember where we were headed in the dark. Only the sound of a forceful stream of piss hitting the forest floor. When he stepped away from me, and right then and there I knew we had nowhere to get to. Our arrival sounding all around in a dark so dark I couldn't see my hand in front of my face or anything else put there. Only his insistence, an unimpeded flow, and it seemed my ears were made for this, for I was his audience and his alone in that stillness where even if a tree fell. So on my subway ride over here, a friend emailed me a poet named Wendy Larson, and just out of the blue, she's like, oh, I never thanked you for your book. Oh, is that like a bad mic? Scratchy, right? Is it any difference? It's like the exact same. No, is it better? All right, let me start over now. So anyways, my friend Wendy sent me an email. She said, oh, thanks for that book you gave me a few months ago. I've just gotten to it. And she says, a lot of it shocks me and I don't like it, but I do like these poems, these three. So I'm going to read the poems she likes. And that's it. And then we'll hear that. So this is Meet Me Under the Whale. I don't remember what hour it was we met, only that the room was hot. I don't remember if there was even a clock in the room, only that you had stolen the hands off its face, eyes already darting under the table, slips of the tongue like paper cuts we would get to suck on while a chanteuse nonchalantly took the stage. You looked at me like a worm crawling on a glass globe, waiting for something to come along and pluck you off. Seems like we'd been ordering off the same menus for years. Only the prices had changed. Note for note, the songs no longer recognizable as we rode into the mouth of a whale full of untold myths. Staircases spiraling down, it hardly matters now who asked for the check or even who paid, how much everyone got tipped. We were in there for a long time trying to decide. Master, the tempest is raging, tinged with its laissez-faire jazz. While Our Lady leaned on a baby grand, what word is this? I can't. Her combs inlaid with mother of pearl thrown down. Bleached bones and tongues of the damned washing up on shore in the corners of our eyes. And these are 2 love letters. So a friend of mine, she just came back from Morocco and gave me this yesterday. So I'm wearing it. And nomadic tribes people near Algeria made this. So there. So this is Love Letter Marrakesh. He says, would you like to have a look inside? You're already pretty close to broke. But why not? He doesn't need to know. Most of the bracelets are made by machine, designs stamped onto sterling blanks. You know he'll take his lighter to the embedded stones, lapis, coral, hematite, to prove they aren't fake. By now, you found yourself far back enough of the store to feel like getting lost, not wanting to speak as he leads you by the hand behind veils of silk that hang down to your feet, where the mint tea has been steeping. Are you looking for something special for your wife? He asks, his arm brushing yours as he pours the tea with flair from shoulder height, the golden stream filling the glasses more than half full before he empties them back into the pot, only to pour again. The tea finding its level there where your fingers touch the glass, the sugar in the metal box, not cubes nor bricks, but crystal chunks as you reach into your pockets, pulling out whatever change you've still got left. Who said anything about going home? And this is a love letter from Dublin. How was it I'd hopped the pond, not downing a single pint at the Guinness distillery? The air thick with a fat sweetness like corn syrup hovering over Cedar Rapids. While the bloke who asked for light asked where I was from, then said, New Yorkers know how to party, though from where you're from, Christmas lasts 2 days when it's more like 2 weeks over here. A fist bump between us, and off we went down cobblestones mostly wet for my entire stay. 1,000 icicle lights doubled in a puddle growing at my feet as I ashed my Cuban Robusto that cost too much. For whatever I did to excess. A headless torso on Grindr 86 feet away, messaging me as I made my way through the hotel's revolving door. So I asked if he'd like to follow upstairs, his clothes off in an instant. A stranger standing there, more responsive to my touch than that tree in St. Stephen's Green I laid my hands on to see if Ireland had anything to say to me. Henry Moore's memorial to Yeats, looking haggard, beleaguered from too many wars. The covers on my queen-size bed thrown off for more nights than I care to count. The scones and clotted cream from afternoon tea at Shelburne's making me sick to my stomach. So many finger sandwiches chased down with the brew infused with bergamot. The shower, too hot as he toweled off, crumbs left on the mattress as if I cared or needed to be rid of him. Sad, Nancy Wilson had died. A duet with Cannonball Adderley playing on my phone, Bluetooth speaker abuzz with Save Your Love for Me blasted through paper-thin walls. When he asked, how many more nights would I like to be in town, offering to take me to the Power Score Gardens if I could manage a dart to Bray. But I didn't know how, or said the wrong thing. Unsaddled at last on my last night in Dublin, listening to the hooves of a well-hung horseman passing by.
Thank you so much to Ed and Timothy. Now to introduce Thad, we have Max Robbins, the publisher of Blue Streak Press and executive director for the Center for Communications. Thank you so
much. Wow. It is wonderful to be here. And, you know, if any of you haven't seen this wonderful new edition of an incredible work, here it is. And I think it's really apt that we're here tonight, and I'm really flattered that Thad asked me to introduce him. You know, the first thing in our first book of a new press that you see on this cover is that Thad won the Members' Choice Award of the Asian American Workshop. So I think it's really quite apt that we're here. And when we were conceiving the idea of the press some years ago, the first person I thought about was Thad. And we've known each other a long, long time. I think the first time I heard Thad was over 3 decades ago. I was 14, he was 15. And he was a really a prodigy. No, but it was amazing because we knew each other from another world, and our journalism world, and it's always kind of dicey when you like somebody. Are you going to like their work? And I remember he read, it was this little space. It was in 7th Avenue in Brooklyn. I think it was above a beauty parlor or something, if memory serves. And my memory probably doesn't serve from those days. But and it was an amazing reading. And it was smart, funny, incredible economy of language. And I've been a Thad fanboy ever since. And so when we started this press, I approached Thad about this. He's been very patient and generous as we've gone through some growing pains. But I've always found his work to be incredibly insightful, incredibly honest, and with just an amazing economy of language, and infused with a truth and humor that are rare. And what's always really impressed me about Thaddeus is he walks this amazing tightrope, that if you don't hit those notes perfectly, everything falls apart. And that's one of the excitement when you read a book like Haywire, available here tonight for $15. Shameless plug time. That it's a complete surprise, because when I read Thaddeus's works or have the pleasure of hearing him read, I'm like, is he going to go there? Is he really going to go there? Is he going to do that? Is it going to work? And yeah, and it does, and really without fail. So that's really quite enough out of me. I encourage you to write the book. All the proceeds from it tonight go into his pocket. So, my longtime friend and a tremendous writer, Thaddeus Rutkowski.
Yeah, thanks, Max, for that introduction, and thanks for putting out this book. Story with this book is it came out in I think 2011, and the original publisher shut down. So I was just hoping that the book would be available somewhere again, and Blue Streak came through, and I'm glad the book still lives. And what it is it's a collection of 49 fictions. They're all about 4 or 5 pages long, and each one stands alone. So I'm going to read two of them now, and the book covers a lifetime. It starts in childhood and goes up through the present of 2011. And so I'm going to start near the beginning, which is more of a childhood type story. And the reason I'm reading this is I heard someone in this room read this recently, and I'd never read it. So I'm going to try reading it myself because I liked hearing it. And I'm not going to name that person, but he's in this room. It's called Vacation Time. My father loaded suitcases, fishing gear, and butterfly nets into the family car, then told us to get in. My mother sat in front. The three of us kids took the back. He started driving in the evening. This trip would take 2 hours by plane, he said, but I'd rather be at the wheel. If something goes wrong while you're in a plane, there isn't much you can do about it. I'm going to drive all night, he continued. If I don't drink anything, I'll be awake for the next 12 hours. The car had no air conditioning, so we kept the windows open. My brother and sister and I leaned against each other to rest, but it was hard to relax. When I slept, I dreamed of witnessing a plane crash. The plane had no wings. Its fuselage rocked in the air next to a highway before hitting the ground. In the morning, the scene was the same as the evening before, only brighter. I watched the approaching roll of the concrete expressway, punctuated by green directional signs. I made this trip with my brother once, my father said, but he drove for only about an hour. He thought the car hood was going to fly up and hit the windshield. I had to take over then. Somewhere in North Carolina, we began to pass billboards for Pedro's south of the border. The advertisements had catchy headlines like, "Only 2 hours to Pedro's. Vámonos a Pedro's. You're getting closer, compadre." And arriba, arriba, arriba. We stopped at the entertainment complex, a compound of gas stations and souvenir shops situated around a dusty oval track. I went into a fireworks shed and bought a sheet of explosives. After we crossed into South Carolina, we saw one more billboard with the headline, "Hey, amigo, you missed it." My brother and sister and I tried not to bother each other with our impatience. We pointed at other cars' license plates or read magazines. The last thing we wanted to do was act up. At one point, we passed a sign for Big Bass Lake. A vandal had erased the B in Bass. My sister found the new name very amusing. "Hey," she said, "it's Big Ass Lake." "Yeah," my brother said. "Does that lake have a bottom?" "Don't start acting up," my father warned. We stopped at a roadside motel for the night. A couple of large dark-leaf trees stood near our room. I thought they were pecan trees because we were in pecan country. After 36 hours of car travel, we arrived at a residential community near a Florida beach. My grandmother, my father's mother, came to greet us. "Did you memorize all of the road signs?" she asked me. I shook my head no. "Then you won't be able to tell your father how to get home." I walked around the outside of the house and looked at the manicured landscape. There were sprays of flowers and stalks of cacti next to the sidewalks. At the end of the block was a golf course. The air felt hot and cottony. I amused myself by setting off firecrackers on the quiet streets. I laid the explosives in sidewalk cracks, lit the fuses, and ran. I blew up a few on the golf course. The reports echoed across the greens like rifle shots. Later, our father took us in his car to a semi-wild area. He drove along a canal through farmland, then stopped where two water ditches met. He brought fishing rods and butterfly nets out of the trunk. As we fished in the canals, we found that our lures attracted alligator gar fish. The gars cruised the surface, looking to attack anything of edible size. Our treble hooks lodged in their bony mouths, and we had to remove the hooks with pliers. We threw most of the fish back, but kept one. It was about 3 feet long and 2 inches in diameter. It looked like a piece of rubber hose. When I grew bored, I picked up a mesh net and ran into the jungle. My father, brother, and sister stayed on the roadway. I waded through grass and weeds in pursuit of zebra-striped and sulfur-colored butterflies. As I stumbled between trees, spiderwebs clung to my skin and my eyeglasses. I tried to brush away the filaments as I went. When we got back to my grandmother's, my father skinned the gar, wrapped the carcass in plastic, and put it in the refrigerator. He pinned the dead butterflies to fiberboard. In the evening, I noticed that my ankles and lower legs were itchy. I scratched, and red bumps appeared on my skin. I kept clawing until I drew blood. The next day, the lumps hadn't shrunk. When I pointed them out to my parents, my father told me that chiggers were living under my skin. They lay eggs there, he said, but the eggs won't hatch. You just have to wait for the adult chiggers to die. We had something like this in China, my mother said. We had lice. Children with lice had to shave their heads. My parents took me to an ocean beach. You never know, my mother said. Modern medicine isn't very scientific. Chiggers probably don't like salt, so swimming in the ocean might help. My mother went into the surf with me while my father sat on the beach. I bobbed in the water until a wave broke over my head and drove my face into the sand. After that, I sat with my father and watched the tops of my feet and knees turn red from the sun. Back at the house, I heard my mother and grandmother arguing. I just need a few $1,000s, my father said, to get my printing business going. Why don't you get a job, my grandmother asked, and make the money yourself? That's my job, printing art books for the masses. I don't make art for snobs. I make art that's cheap. I need financial backing. If you stop drinking, you can use the money you save for your studio. Booze might keep me poor, but I can't create art with it. In fact, I can't create art without it. In fact, I can't believe your house is dry. Where can I get a drink around here? You're upsetting your children. Kids are the least of my worries. My father stepped out of the house, got into his car, and drove away. Presumably, he was seeking a bar for business people. I walked to the golf course. I was carrying a sketchbook, pencils, and crayons. I sat on the ground facing a palm tree and laid out my tools. After making some marks, I had the fronds and scaly bark down on paper. I focused on an air plant growing on the tree trunk. I rendered the plant's snaky leaves, if they were leaves, as precisely as I could. When I was finished, I had a clear depiction of a palm oasis on a golf course. The next day, my father told us we were leaving. My mother insults me, he said. She thinks I should join the rat race. You can go to the end of the universe, my mother said to him, but you will find yourself back where you started. That's modern physics. We hit the road in the evening. The air was full of humidity, so we kept the car windows open. When we stopped for gas, I saw huge insects flying into an electrified screen. I heard them sizzling on the glowing coils. My brother and sister and I settled in for the ride. A strong breeze washed over our faces as we slept through the night. My siblings and I woke in Georgia the next morning. We were traveling on a 2-lane road. At one point, one of us saw a hand-lettered sign advertising fresh petches. My father joked about the spelling with my sister. It's a petch stand, he said, in the petch state. Let's get some petches, my sister said. My father pulled onto the shoulder and parked. He walked to a wooden counter and bought a small basket of fruit. And then the next piece is about our child. We have a child who was a little kid. Now she's a teenager. This is about when she was a little kid. It's called it's called Daughterly Advice. Daughterly Advice. She asks me if I miss my father, and I say yes, sometimes. She's known for quite a while that she's never met my father because he's not around. That is, he's not around on Earth. Do you miss him a lot, she asks. Not a lot. Why not? I have mixed feelings, but I don't want to go into them. My father was present in my life, But when he left for good, I wasn't totally unhappy. However, that wouldn't make sense to her. He passed away quite a while ago, I say. What did he look like? He had gray hair. Like you, your hair is silver. Perhaps she's saying she doesn't need to meet my father because she has me, and I look like him. The thing is, I look like my mother, not my father. She has an Asian grandmother because my mother is still around. My father really liked children, I said. I don't say that he liked children in the wrong way, but he never saw me. She means that if he'd seen her, he would have liked her. I can't argue with that. Later, I asked my wife if our daughter is really curious about my father, or if she's just worried that I'm going to pass away, and no one will be around to take care of her. My wife says she asks if I miss my father, too. I know how we could have more space, she said. We could use the ceiling as the floor. I see that the top of her head is resting on a couch cushion, and her back is arched over the back support. She's looking at the room upside down. We could have black benches, she continues. I see that the stereo speakers mounted high on the walls are black. Yes, we could sit on them if the ceiling were the floor. The problem would be making the ceiling into the floor. We could try to bend the space-time continuum and put the ceiling on the same plane as the floor. Or we could leave the ceiling and floor at opposite ends of the apartment's vertical axis and alternate between sitting on the floor and clinging to the ceiling. Or we could wait for the solstice, when the sun reaches its northernmost or southernmost point on the celestial equator, and hope the ceiling and floor somehow switch places along with the seasons. Or I suppose we could apply for a bridge loan based on our current equity and use the borrowed money to move into a bigger apartment, maybe even in our now expensive neighborhood. That way we'd have enough square footage not to have to use the ceiling as the floor. It might be easier, though, to put our heads on the floor, look up at the ceiling, and imagine we are sitting on the ceiling, not doing a handstand on the floor. I guess we'll cross that bridge loan when we come to it. I like professional people, she says. I don't like silly people. She's referring to a fictional mother and daughter on a television show. The daughter is serious, but the mother is goofy. I happen to like the mother better. But I wonder if our kid is referring to us, her parents. I'm a pretty silly person. I spend a lot of time working for no money. In fact, I spend more money than I make on my own creative work. I'm always taking a financial loss so I can do my crazy thing. When I was a teenager, one of my friends told me, "You got no sense," meaning you have no sense of practicality. He said it more than once, and maybe he was right. My wife isn't as silly as I am. She's a practical person, but she can be casual about a lot of things. Housekeeping, for example. But then I can be lax, too, about housekeeping and other things, like clothes shopping. On the bright side, maybe our daughter will grow up to be a professional, one who not only makes money, but doesn't experience an identity crisis while doing it. That would be a seriously good development. I wouldn't compel her to do that, though, because I'm not a licensed wool-suited certified professional. Are my thighs fat, she asks. I look at her legs and jeans. No, I don't think so, I say. She touches her knees together to show me what she means. My friend says my thighs are weird, she says. I've seen her friend many times. She's a tall, skinny kid, and she has thin parents, both of whom are tall. As parents go, I'm neither tall nor thin. I'm not a lot of things. But I am supportive. I want to strengthen her self-esteem. I don't want to agree with her and say her thighs are fat. That would be like telling a grown woman there's something wrong with her body. Who am I to talk? My primary care physician has been on my case about my weight for a while now. More pounds mean higher blood pressure. The heart works harder to support the greater weight. Higher blood pressure could lead to cardiac disaster. Don't worry about what your friend says, I say. I don't want to grow up to be chubby, she says. I don't want to be 100 years old and 1,000 pounds. I don't point out that what she has described would be a kind of hellish miracle. You, she says, I see your hair. Gross. At first I think she means the hair on my head, but I don't know what's gross about that. I mean, she and many other people see it every day. I know it's becoming a possibly unattractive gray. I know it's wet because I just got out of the shower, but I don't see anything wrong with having hair plastered to my scalp. Then I realize she means the hair under my arms, my pittle hair, the hair exposed when I reach up shirtless to find her gloves. I haven't put on a shirt because I'm wet, but at least I'm looking for her gloves, a helpful gesture since it's cold outside. I look at her face to find out what she really means. She has the intense expression she has most mornings, the expression that signals she's about to snap. I want to say, are you out of your young mind? But I think better of it. Luckily, her mother comes to my rescue. Leave Daddy alone, she says. We walk away from our standoff. I don't plan to shave my armpits, but I'll try not to make her look at those hollows again. Her gloves remain lost. One more segment. One more segment to this chapter. This story's not over yet. Does she see me as a father figure or a booty butt? A trusted advisor, or a stupid head? I guess it depends on the mood she's in. If she's feeling frustrated, maybe the polish on her nails isn't drying neatly. She won't tolerate any suggestions from me. She won't want to hear me say, just leave the polish on, don't mess with it. That would cause her to swing something in my direction. The sleeve and zipper of her winter jacket, perhaps, as if to shut me up. Then she will take the nail polish and paint pink color everywhere. Well, actually, she won't be able to use the polish because she doesn't know how. So she will ask her mother for help. But when she's in a good mood, as when she's wearing her mother's hat with ear flaps, she will make dog sounds and ask for a mirror to see if she looks like a hound. She'll sing in dog words as she prances down the sidewalk. I may be ignoring her, but suddenly I'll hear an odd human canine chorus of yips. I'll see a little kid in the posture of a jumping, begging spaniel, and I'll look into the dark window of a building at her reflection. She'll trust my judgment then. Do I look like a beagle, she'll ask. I don't want to disappoint her. Yes, I say. You have the pup thing going. That won't be enough to earn me the respect owed to a father figure, though. Thanks, weirdo, she'll say. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause to Thad and our readers, Ed and Timothy. Thank you so much for being here. Get home safely. We have wine and books for sale in the back.